What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing our first Godzilla -2. Is that what we're going to call it until we get a title? Probably. Our first Godzilla -2 discussion video slash theory video. In this one, we're going to be discussing something that I think flew under the radar just a little bit. I know I've seen some comments about it for a while, but I don't think a lot of people were fully aware of it from Godzilla -1, and that has to do with who left the scars on this guy right here. Godzilla at the start of the movie on Odo Island, before he became the Godzilla we all know and love. Who was he fighting? And what does that mean for the next movie? Before I go through my list, I want to hear right off the bat, who do you think left the scars and scratches on Godzilla's body? I would love to hear that. First, I'm going to go through some of the history of what we know about Godzilla before his evolution, and then I'm going to get into a really interesting detail that director Takashi Yamazaki revealed that gives us a really important clue as to what might be going on with Godzilla's scars, and then finally, we'll go through my list of the top 7 possibilities of who left the scars on Godzilla's body. So I know some of you guys don't even know what I'm talking about right now, but at the start of Godzilla -1, when he shows up to attack on Odo Island, one of the sneakiest details flies past so many of our radars, and that's that Godzilla is covered in scars. They're actually specifically on the left side of Godzilla's body. I don't see any on the right side of his body. There's a little bit on his chest, but they're mostly all over the left side of his body, and they're really going up the shoulder and into the neck and towards the head area. So whatever he was fighting, it seems to have been going for the kill. Okay, so here's what we know about Godzilla just in general. Early in the movie, Shikishima describes Godzilla saying it was like a dinosaur that over the years had turned into something else. So Godzilla's obviously like not a normal dinosaur. The dude looks monstrous to begin with. Shikishima later describes Godzilla as a giant monster like a dinosaur. We also know that Godzilla is incredibly territorial. He obviously reacts very harshly when they blast some lights in his eyes on Odo Island. That is the inciting incident for his rampage. Godzilla responds to the spotlight hitting him in the face with violence. So Godzilla is a very territorial creature. The Godzilla -1 novelization was written by the director and writer of Godzilla -1, Takashi Yamazaki, and it gives us just a little bit more context as to Godzilla's origins and his relationship to the people of Odo. In it, we learn that Godzilla hunts for fish and often brings them to the surface where the people of Odo collect them, and it's kind of a local delicacy. In a way, Godzilla has a symbiotic relationship with those people. We also know from that novelization, Yamazaki recently doubled down on Twitter confirming that Godzilla is smart enough to have developed a very unique hunting strategy for these fish. Basically, he chases them down to the lower depths of the water where they pressurize so fast that they die and they float back up to the surface. Obviously, that is foreshadowing Godzilla's eventual defeat at the end of -1, but it's interesting to know that Godzilla's got this type of intelligence. Godzilla was in fact peaceful to the people of Odo Island, and not only that, but he was smart enough to go out of his way to spare Tachibana and Shikishima, as he understands those were the only 2 humans that don't attack him during the Odo massacre. He responds to those who do attack him with violence accordingly. This is another thing that is confirmed in the novelization. Also, from what we know, Godzilla's main attacks in his original form are headbutts, chomps, and tail strikes. His arms are a little too small for combat, and he's a little more vulnerable up close as a result of it. If something gets up close to him, he can't really defend himself as easily. This is all going to be important here in a second. One of the most interesting things about Godzilla's Odo Island state is that Takashi Yamazaki confirmed in an interview, and it is in the Godzilla -1 novelization as well, Godzilla already has a natural regenerative capability, and he is untouched by radiation at the start of the film. The Godzilla that appears on Odo Island is in fact a natural occurring creature in the -1 universe. Godzilla, when he's hit with the bomb, his regeneration tries to repair him, turning him back into the Godzilla he was, except it's gone all haywire due to the radiation, and it causes him to mutate into the Godzilla who attacks Ginza. I think this is crazy because it implies something really interesting. Godzilla has scars when he attacks on Odo Island, and they're fresh, which means he might have been attacked more recently than we think. Another really interesting fact is that when Godzilla spots Shikishima, we get a really nice close-up of Godzilla, and you can actually see one of the scratches on his neck is slightly opened. It's still red underneath. It hasn't healed. But if Godzilla's got a healing factor, why isn't that healed? That gets us into the actual topic of today's video, who left the scars? The reason I haven't talked about this theory sooner is because I kind of dismissed it when I originally heard about it because, yeah, Godzilla's got scars on him, whatever. He's an old dinosaur. He's been around since presumably when the dinosaurs were were around. So of course the dude's probably gonna have some scars on him. It just shows his age. But I didn't realize that the regeneration was a natural part of Godzilla, and I definitely didn't realize that the scars were fresh. So that, I think, shoots down the first theory, which is that Godzilla's had these scars forever, and they're actually really old, and they've been there since the day of the dinosaur, when Godzilla was getting into fights left and right. I don't think that's the case. I think the scars are relatively new, and I think that is important, especially because we know Takashi Yamazaki wants the next Godzilla film to be a versus movie, where Godzilla takes on an enemy monster. He has been talking about this since the first film released. With him returning to direct the new movie, there's some question as to who Godzilla's gonna be fighting. So the way I'm gonna go through these is from least likely to most likely, and the first kaiju we're gonna talk about is Hedorah. Takashi Yamazaki has recently expressed some interest in remaking Godzilla vs. Hedorah to some degree. That's a monster he's interested in having Godzilla fight again, which I've seen a lot of people take to mean that Hedorah is gonna be in the sequel. I don't think that's the case. I don't want to jump the gun here, and I'm gonna say for this conversation, who left with the scars on Godzilla, it wasn't Hedorah. Hedorah is a creature that needs to be created through very specific circumstances. I think we would see more signs that it was Hedorah than just the scars on Godzilla's neck. Hedorah also does not have fingers. He does not have fingernails. He cannot scratch. It wasn't Hedorah. I think Hedorah would melt the Odo Godzilla as opposed to scratch him up, so I'm gonna shoot that one down. That wasn't who did it. The next possibility is that it was Mothra. Mothra is a possibility mainly because of her popularity. It's possible that because Mothra is such a popular monster, Toho would want to use her in a sequel, and also Mothra is one of the few naturally occurring monsters in the Toho mythology. Mothra is a monster that doesn't require radiation to exist. She could already exist right off the bat. I don't think it was Mothra either for a lot of reasons. Number one, her size. She would be massive compared to an Odo Godzilla, but also because she also doesn't have fingernails. I know she's got those little tiny arms, but I don't think those are leaving scratches all over Godzilla. I don't think that's the case. My next possibility, and the first one where I'd be open to it, is Rodan. I don't think it would be like a Rodan like the one we see in King of the Monsters or the original Rodan. I think it'd be more like the ones we see in Godzilla Singular Point, a pre-evolved Rodan, and that could be something that would be interesting to see. I don't know if it's gonna be Rodan. I kind of am into the idea just because Rodan's another monster that you could believe would occur in the real world. Rodan doesn't need radiation to exist, as seen in Singular Point. You could do a more realistic take on it, and then you could mutate him into the Rodan who fights Godzilla. Also because we've never seen a Godzilla versus Rodan movie where the two of them just fight in one movie and there's no other monsters to distract from that. I'd be down for it to be Rodan. I'd be excited for it to be Rodan, especially in a post-King of the Monsters world where I think Rodan has so much more potential than he's ever had before, but I don't think it's gonna be. I just don't think Rodan would be a big enough hook, but I think it could be. I'm saying that's the first possible one. One that I think Godzilla fans would love, one that I would love, and one that would sort of make sense would be Anguirus. Anguirus was, of course, Godzilla's first opponent back in 1955's Godzilla Raids Again, and of course with this movie kind of following in the footsteps of that, going from a more Godzilla 1954 sort of remake into a Godzilla sequel where he's gonna fight another monster, a lot of us are hoping that that monster will be Anguirus. I'm not getting too excited yet. I'm not getting my hopes up too much about that one. Here's why I don't think it would be Anguirus scratching Godzilla up is, again, Anguirus is too huge. Unless you go with, again, like an Anguirus Singular Point style, where he's more of the dinosaur-sized Anguirus. The dude is enormous. One of the bigger open questions about the original Showa continuity is why Godzilla needed to be mutated into Godzilla, but so many of the other monsters just naturally existed. And an Anguirus would be able to eat the Godzillasaurus on Odo Island. He'd just be able to swallow him up in one bite. Now we're getting into the ones that I think are definitely very possible. Here are our top three. Number three is another Godzillasaur, another Godzilla. So Shikishima states in the film, if this is the same Godzilla I saw back then, and it can do this, then it's even bigger than before. Implying that there's a really big possibility in the -1 universe that more than one Godzilla exists, that there's another one out there. And if one Godzilla exists on Odo Island and is a completely naturally occurring creature with a regenerative factor that can keep him alive all these years, why would he be the only one? Why would he be the only one left? That's a really big question that the movie doesn't answer. Of course, maybe it's just because I'm so blinded by the Godzilla 0 rumors that came out before Godzilla -1 of a potential Godzilla versus Godzilla movie, but I think that theory makes the most sense. I also know I have a tendency to be known as the guy who predicts that there's going to be two Godzillas in every continuity, but sometimes I'm right. Like in the Monsterverse, there was another Godzilla, Dagon, who was in the comic books, and no, they didn't retcon that. That's a whole legal issue I don't want to get into. And then also there was two Godzillas in Godzilla Planet of the Monsters. Look, all I'm saying is I think that that's a very likely possibility. I could very much see it being a second Godzilla. Godzilla, another Godzilla. Also because if you look at all those other monsters, which ones have the capability of leaving those scratches on Godzilla? Rodan for sure. He could fly in, he could scratch Godzilla up, and Godzilla could be able to defend himself fairly easily against a Rodan. Anguirus, if he's getting close enough to scratch up Godzilla, I feel like he could probably overpower an Odo Island version Godzilla, even if he's like the size of the Singular Point Anguirus, just because of how that Godzilla is not built for close combat. Another Godzilla, the two of them fighting each other, well, they'd be on an even playing field, so it could very much be a possibility. The next possibility is it was just simply an animal. I guess this is our number 2. I don't think this is even as likely as it being another Godzilla, just because what animal could leave scratches that big? I don't know, like a bear or something? I'm not sure. It's possible Godzilla was sleeping and got ambushed by an animal like a bear. He killed it and then he went around, and then that's when he walks into the movie. I don't think that one's totally likely. I actually think that's a little less likely than it being another Godzilla. But the number 1, and the one that I think probably makes the most sense and is the least exciting, is that it was humans. I don't think it would be the humans on the Odo garrison, considering only one of them knew about Godzilla, and I don't think it'd be the Odo Islanders, but it's possible that some naval personnel, some other Japanese military forces, or even some Americans, maybe Godzilla was off Odo Island on one of his territorial routes and ran into some American island hopping forces. I think it's possible that soldiers were the ones who attacked Godzilla. The reason I don't know if that's exactly why is because I think Godzilla would have a little more vengeance against humans overall in general if that was the case. I don't think he would be sparing Shikishima if that was what was going on. And then the other reason is because the novelization makes it clear that Godzilla's aware the atomic bomb that creates him, that mutates him, was used by humans. He's aware that humans were the ones who did that, and that's actually what inspires him to start attacking US naval forces. I feel like if Godzilla was already wounded by humans, he would have been a lot more malicious and vicious towards the humans he sees on Odo Island. I don't think he would have left Shikishima sitting there in the plane. I think he would have chomped him right away when they made eye contact. Which means, if we're keeping track, my verdict is it's probably another Godzilla. And I don't know if the next movie will unpack that or explore that. I would love for it to. If they put the scratches there, they put them there for a reason, which I really like, especially if they put the bigger open wound that seems to still be healing, and then they make it clear Godzilla has a healing factor before he's mutated. I think that's probably done for a reason, and my fingers are crossed that it's so that we can get the first Godzilla versus Godzilla movie with the next film, as I think that'd be awesome. But the other monsters I'd be down for are Anguirus or Rodan. What about you? After all of this, who do you want it to be, and who do you think it is? Did your answer change from the beginning? Do you now have a different answer? Do you now want it to be somebody else? Or are you sticking with the same answer? Do you still want it to be whoever you said at the start? Comment below and let me know. I would love to keep this conversation going, and I'd love to start doing more of these leading up to Godzilla -2, or whatever it's going to be called. I love these discussion videos, I love these theory videos, and I want to keep them going. As always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below. That is the most direct way to support this channel and to make sure that I can continue to make videos like this for you. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you guys next time for the next one. D-Man out.